Jake Morrison checked his instruments one more time. The small stealth craft hummed quietly through the darkness of space. Stars dotted the black sky like tiny diamonds. He had been flying alone for 3 hours now, moving away from the main fleet to scout the area around Kepler 442. The Navy SEAL adjusted his position in the pilot seat. His uniform was dark blue with the SEAL Trident badge on his chest. Around his neck, hidden under his shirt, hung 2 metal dog tags. They felt warm against his skin. Jake had worn them for 8 years, ever since he finished SEAL training. The mission was simple. Check the outer moons of the star system. Look for any signs of alien activity. Report back to the USS Valiant. Jake had done dozens of these solo runs before. They were usually boring. Just empty space and dead rocks, but something felt different. Today, Jake's radar screen started beeping. A small dot appeared at the edge of his scanner, then another, then 5 more. The dots were moving fast, coming straight toward him. "Unknown contacts approaching," Jake said into his radio. "Requesting backup." Static filled his earpiece. No response from the fleet. Jake tried again, still nothing. The communication system was working, but no one was answering. The main fleet was too far away. The dots on his screen grew larger. Jake could see them now through his front window. 7 ships, each one bigger than his small craft. They looked like nothing he had ever seen before. The hulls were green and covered in sharp spikes. Red lights blinked along their sides. Jake's hands moved quickly over the controls. He turned his ship around and pushed the engines to full power. The stealth craft shot forward, but the alien ships were faster. They spread out in a circle around him, cutting off all escape routes. A bright blue beam struck Jake's ship. The lights went out, the engines died. His craft began to spin slowly in space, completely dead. Jake grabbed his sidearm and checked the magazine. 15 rounds. Not much against 7 alien ships, but it was all he had. One of the alien ships moved closer. Jake could see details now. The hull was covered in strange symbols. Weapon ports lined the sides. A docking tube extended from the bottom of the ship and clamped onto Jake's craft. With a loud bang, Jake heard footsteps in the corridor outside his cockpit. Heavy boots on metal floors. The door to his cockpit hissed open. 3 figures stepped. Inside, they were unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. Each one stood over 7 feet tall. Their skin was green and covered in scales like a lizard. Yellow eyes glowed in their reptilian faces. Sharp teeth filled their mouths. They wore black armor that covered their entire bodies except for their heads and hands. The lead alien pointed a weapon at Jake. It looked like a rifle, but it glowed with blue energy. Jake slowly raised his hands. He knew when he was outnumbered. The alien spoke in a voice that sounded like gravel grinding together. Jake could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. "Get up. Come with us." "Do not resist." Jake stood up slowly. One of the aliens grabbed his pistol from his holster. Another one searched his pockets and took his knife, his emergency beacon, and his datapad. They left his dog tags alone. The metal chain was hidden under his shirt, and they did not notice it. The aliens pushed Jake through the docking tube into their ship. The corridor was dark and smelled like sulfur. Red lights cast strange shadows on the walls. Jake memorized every detail: the layout of the ship, the number of doors, the types of weapons the aliens carried. His SEAL training had taught him to always gather intelligence, even when captured. They walked through several corridors before stopping at a large room. Dozens of aliens worked at control stations. Screens showed star maps and tactical displays. This was the command center of the ship. An alien larger than the others sat in a chair at the center of the room. His armor was different, covered in gold symbols. Scars marked his face and arms. This was clearly their leader. The big alien looked at Jake for a long moment. Then he spoke to the others in their grinding language. Jake caught some gestures and expressions. They were discussing him like he was a piece of cargo, something to be sold or traded. The leader alien stood up and walked over to Jake. He was huge, at least 8 feet tall. His yellow eyes studied Jake from head to toe. Then he reached out with one clawed hand and poked Jake in the chest. Jake did not move or react. The alien seemed disappointed that Jake did not show fear. More aliens entered the room. They carried chains and metal restraints. Jake knew what was coming next. He could fight, but there were too many of them. Better to save his strength for later, the aliens chained Jake's hands behind his back. They put metal bands around his ankles connected by a short chain. Jake could walk, but only in small steps. They pushed him out of the command center and down another corridor. The holding area was at the bottom of the ship. Rows of metal cages lined the walls. Most were empty, but some held other prisoners. Jake saw creatures he had never imagined. One looked like a giant insect with 4 arms. Another was made of what looked like living crystal. A third was just a ball of glowing gas floating in a special container. The aliens threw Jake into an empty cage and locked the door. The cage was small, barely large enough for him to lie down. The floor was metal grating. A bucket in the corner served as a toilet. A small dish held what looked like water. Jake sat down on the floor and leaned against the wall, his dog tags pressed against his chest under his shirt. He thought about the words stamped on the metal. His name, his blood type, his religion, his unit. The aliens had no idea what those tags meant. They did not know that Jake Morrison was not just any human. He was a Navy SEAL. He was trained to survive in any situation. He was trained to fight against any enemy. He was trained to never give up. Jake closed his eyes and began to plan. The aliens thought they had captured a helpless prisoner. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Jake woke up to the sound of screaming. The metal floor of his cage vibrated under his body. He sat up and looked around. The other prisoners were awake too. They all looked scared. Through the small window in his cage, Jake could see they were no longer in space. The ship had landed on a planet. Outside, he saw a massive city with tall buildings that reached toward purple clouds. The sky was a strange orange color. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. A group of aliens marched into the holding area. They wore different armor than the ship crew. These aliens had red stripes painted on their faces and carried shock rods that sparked with electricity. The lead alien opened Jake's cage and pointed the shock rod at him. Jake understood. He stepped out of the cage and let them chain his hands again. They did the same with 3 other prisoners. The insect creature, the crystal being, and the gas ball in its container. The aliens marched them through long underground tunnels. The walls were made of black stone. Torches burned in metal holders, casting dancing shadows everywhere. Jake could hear something above them. A deep rumbling sound like thunder that never stopped. They walked for 20 minutes before reaching a large metal door. 2 guards stood on either side. The door opened with a loud grinding noise. Beyond it was a room filled with weapons and armor. An alien with silver stripes on his face pointed at racks of weapons. Swords, spears, axes, and things Jake did not recognize. All of them looked old and worn. The alien spoke in broken English. You choose weapon, you fight. You die with honor or live with shame. Jake looked at the weapons carefully. Most were too heavy or too clumsy. He picked up a short sword that felt balanced in his hand. It was sharp and light. Good for quick movements. The crystal being chose a long spear. The insect creature picked up 2 curved blades. The gas ball could not hold weapons, so they gave it a metal suit with spikes on the arms. The silver-striped alien led them to another door. This one opened upward like a garage door. Bright light poured through the opening. The rumbling sound became a roar. Jake stepped through the door and stopped. He was standing in the biggest building he had ever seen. It was a massive arena that stretched for miles in every direction. Tall walls rose up on all sides, filled with thousands and thousands of alien spectators. They were all screaming and cheering. The arena floor was covered in sand. Scattered around were broken weapons, pieces of armor, and dark stains that Jake knew were blood. In the center of the arena stood a platform with a golden throne. An alien wearing a cape sat on the throne. He was bigger than the others and covered in battle scars. The alien on the throne stood up and raised his arms. The crowd became quiet. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the arena. Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire, today we bring you fresh meat from the outer worlds. Watch as these weak creatures face the might of our champions." The crowd roared again. Jake felt the sound in his chest like a physical force. He had been in loud places before, but nothing like this. A gate opened. On the opposite side of the arena, something huge stepped out. Jake had faced dangerous animals before, but nothing like this creature. It stood 12 feet tall and walked on 4 legs like a lion, but its body was covered in black armor plating. Its head was long and filled, with teeth as big as knives. Red eyes glowed in its skull. "The Bloodfang," announced the alien on the throne. "Undefeated in 30 battles." The creature let out a roar that shook the arena. It started moving toward the prisoners. Its claws left deep scratches in the sand. The other prisoners scattered. The insect creature ran toward the wall. The crystal being tried to hide behind a broken pillar. The gas ball in its metal suit rolled away as fast as it could. Jake did not run. He stood in the center of the arena and watched the Bloodfang approach. His SEAL training had taught him to study his enemy. Look for weaknesses. Plan his attack. The creature was fast but clumsy. It was used to fighting scared opponents who ran away. Its armor was thick, but Jake could see gaps at the joints. The neck looked less protected than the rest of the body. The Bloodfang charged at Jake. Its claws dug into the sand as it ran. Jake waited until the last second, then rolled to the side. The creature's momentum carried it past him. Jake slashed with his sword as it went by, cutting a shallow line across its rear leg. The crowd gasped. No one had ever drawn blood from the Bloodfang so quickly. The creature spun around, angry now. It lashed out with its claws, trying to catch Jake, but Jake was already moving. He circled the beast, staying just out of reach. Every few seconds he darted in and cut another small wound. The Bloodfang was getting frustrated. It roared and charged again. This time Jake did not dodge to the side. He dropped to his knees and slid under the creature's belly. His sword cut upward as he slid, opening a long gash. The creature stumbled and fell. Jake rolled away and came up on his feet. The Bloodfang tried to get up, but its legs would not support it. Blood poured from the wound in its belly. Jake moved quickly. He grabbed the creature's head with one hand and drove his sword through its neck with the other. The Bloodfang shuddered once and died. The arena was completely silent. 2 million. Aliens stared at Jake in shock. The small human had killed their champion in less than 5 minutes. The alien on the throne slowly stood up. His yellow eyes were fixed on Jake. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but everyone could hear it. "Impossible. No creature has ever defeated the Bloodfang alone." Jake pulled his sword from the creature's neck and wiped the blood on the sand. He looked up at the throne and met the alien's gaze. He did not speak. He did not need to. The alien on the throne gestured to the guards. They came out and surrounded Jake, but they moved carefully now, like they were afraid of him. As they led Jake back to the tunnels, he heard the crowd beginning to whisper. They were talking about him. The small human who had done the impossible. Jake touched his chest where his dog tags lay hidden under his shirt. The aliens still did not know what they had captured, but they were starting to wonder. In his cell that night, Jake lay on the metal floor and planned his next move. The other prisoners looked at him with new respect. They had seen what he could do, but Jake knew this was just the beginning. He had gotten their attention. Now came the hard part. 3 days passed before they brought Jake back to the arena. During those days, he did not waste time. He exercised in his small cage, keeping his muscles strong. He talked to the other prisoners and learned about the aliens who had captured them. The insect creature was called Zix. He had been a scout for his people before the Zephyrians captured his ship. The crystal being was named Shard. She came from a peaceful world where her people lived in harmony with nature. The gas creature could not speak, but Zix said his name was Drift and he was very intelligent. All of them had been forced to fight in the arena. Most prisoners only lasted 1 or 2 battles before they died. But Jake had killed the Bloodfang, so the arena masters wanted to see what else he could do. The guards came for Jake on the 4th day. They seemed nervous around him now. They kept their shock rods ready and stayed farther away than before. Jake noticed that more guards came than usual. 6 instead of the normal 3. They led him through the tunnels to the weapon room. This time, the silver-striped alien watched him carefully as he picked his weapons. Jake chose the same short sword and added a long knife to his belt. He also picked up a small shield made of metal and leather. "Today you fight champion," the alien said in his broken English. "Real champion, not beast." "Warrior like you," Jake nodded. He had been wondering when they would put him against another thinking opponent instead of just dangerous animals. The arena was even more packed than before. Word had spread about the human who killed the Bloodfang. Aliens had come from all over the planet to see if he could do it again. The alien on the throne stood up. Jake had learned his name was General Kratos. He was the ruler of this world. "And the master of the arena. Citizens," Kratos shouted. "Today the human faces our greatest champion. Behold, Drex the Slayer." The gate opened and another alien stepped out. This one was different from the others. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, and his muscles bulged under his green skin. Scars covered his arms and chest. In his hands, he carried a massive sword that looked like it weighed as much as Jake. But what made Jake pay attention was the way Drex moved. He did not charge like the Bloodfang. He walked slowly and carefully, studying Jake with intelligent eyes. This was a real warrior, not just a beast. The crowd cheered as Drex entered the arena. He had fought here many times before and won every battle. He raised his sword above his head and the crowd roared louder. Drex pointed his sword at Jake and spoke in clear English. "I have killed over 100 enemies in this arena, human. You will be 101. Jake did not reply. He drew his sword and shield and took a fighting stance. He had learned long ago that talk before battle was usually a sign of weakness. Drex circled Jake slowly. The alien was smart. He did not rush into attack. He was looking for openings, studying Jake's defenses. Jake circled too, keeping his shield up and his sword ready. The arena was completely quiet now. 2 million aliens watched and waited. Drex made the first move. He swung his massive sword in a wide arc aimed at Jake's head. Jake ducked under the blade and struck back with his own sword. The blade scraped across Drex's armor but did not cut deep. Drex spun around and brought his sword down from above. Jake caught the blow on his shield. The force drove him to one knee. Drex was incredibly strong. Jake rolled away as Drex's sword crashed into the sand where he had been kneeling. He came up on his feet and slashed at Drex's leg. This time his blade found a gap in the armor and drew blood. Drex roared and swung his sword in a fury of attacks. Jake dodged and blocked, using his speed against the alien's strength. His shield took a beating, but it held. The fight went on for 10 minutes. Both warriors were breathing hard now. Jake had several small cuts on his arms and legs. Drex was bleeding from wounds on his thigh and shoulder. Jake could see that Drex was getting tired. The alien's massive sword was wearing him down. Jake's lighter weapons let him move faster and save his energy. Drex made a mistake. He swung his sword too hard and it stuck in a wooden post left over from an earlier fight. For just a second, he was defenseless. Jake moved like lightning. He threw his shield at Drex's face. The alien ducked, but that gave Jake time to get close. Jake's sword found the gap in Drex's armor at the neck. Drex fell backward, his green blood spreading in the sand. The arena was silent for a long moment. Then Jake heard something he had not expected. Some of the aliens were cheering. Not all of them, but enough to surprise him. They were cheering for him, not for their own champion. General Kratos stood up on his throne. His face showed anger and confusion. 2 of his champions had been killed by this small human. It should not have been possible. "Remove the body," Kratos commanded. "Return the human to his cell." As the guards surrounded Jake, he saw something that made him pause. In the crowd, an old alien with white stripes on his face was staring at him intently. The old alien's eyes were not angry like the others. They looked worried. Back in his cell, Jake sat on the floor and cleaned his wounds. They were not serious, but they needed attention. Shard reached through the bars of her cage and touched his arm. Where her crystal finger touched, the cuts began to heal. "Thank you," Jake said. You fight different than others, Shard said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. You fight like you have done this before, many times. Zix clicked his mandibles in agreement. The guards are afraid of you now. They whisper about you in the corridors. Jake nodded. He had noticed the change too. The guards kept their distance. They spoke in hushed voices when they thought he could not hear. What do they say? Jake asked. They say you are not normal prisoner, Zix replied. They say you fight like they're ancient warriors, like you have been trained for war. Jake touched his chest where his dog tags lay hidden. The aliens were starting to understand that he was different, but they still did not know how different. That night, Jake lay on the metal floor and thought about home. Somewhere out there, his unit was looking for him. The USS Valiant and her crew would not give up. They would find him eventually, but until then, Jake would do what he had been trained to do. He would survive. He would adapt. He would overcome. The aliens thought they had captured a primitive warrior for their entertainment. They were about to learn the difference between a warrior and a weapon. Outside his cell, Jake could hear the guards talking in low voices. They were planning something new for him, a bigger challenge. A deadlier opponent. Jake smiled in the darkness. Let them come. He was ready for whatever they could throw at him. After all, he was a Navy SEAL, and Navy SEALs never quit. 2 weeks passed, and Jake fought in the arena 6 more times. Each battle was harder than the last. General Kratos sent beasts from distant worlds, trained killers from other planets, and even mechanical warriors made of metal and circuits. Jake won every fight. The crowds grew bigger each time. Aliens traveled from across the galaxy to see the human who could not be defeated. They bet enormous amounts of money on his fights. Some cheered for him to win. Others wanted to see him finally lose. Jake's body bore the marks of his battles. Scars crossed his arms and chest. His hands were calloused from gripping weapons, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. He was learning more about his enemies with each fight. On the morning of his 9th battle, something was different. The guards who came for Jake moved with extra care. They brought 10 soldiers instead of the usual 6. Their leader was an alien Jake had not seen before. This alien was smaller than the others, with gray skin instead of green. His eyes were sharper, more intelligent. When he spoke, his English was perfect. My name is Commander Vexstar, the alien said. I am here to observe your fight today. General Kratos has prepared something special for you. Jake said nothing. He had learned that silence often made his captors more nervous than words. They brought him to the weapon room as usual. But this time, Jake noticed something new. The old alien with white stripes stood in the corner, watching him carefully. The one he had seen in the crowd before. Jake chose his weapons slowly. A sword, a knife, and a small round shield. He also picked up a length of chain with a weight on the end. It was not a traditional weapon, but Jake had ideas for how to use it. The old alien stepped forward. You fight differently than others, he said in broken English. Where you learn to fight like this? Jake looked at him but did not answer. The old alien nodded as if he understood. I am Scholar Nexton, the alien continued. I study warriors from many worlds. You fight like soldiers from old stories, very old stories. Commander Vexstar motioned for the scholar to step back. Enough talk, it is time for the arena. The crowd was the largest Jake had ever seen. Aliens packed every seat and stood in the aisles. The noise was deafening. Jake could feel the excitement in the air like electricity. General Kratos stood on his throne and raised his arms. The crowd became quiet. Today, the human faces our greatest challenge yet, Kratos shouted. 3 champions will fight him at once. Behold, the Crimson Brotherhood. Jake's heart sank. 3 opponents at once would be nearly impossible. But as the gates opened, he saw something that made him smile grimly. The 3 champions were impressive. One was a massive alien with 4 arms and spiked armor. Another was a serpent-like creature that moved like liquid. The third was a mechanical warrior with glowing red eyes and blade arms, but they had made a mistake. They had given Jake the largest arena space ever for this fight. More room meant more options. The battle began with all 3 champions charging at Jake from different directions. Jake ran toward the arena wall, using his speed to avoid being surrounded. The crowd booed, thinking he was running away, but Jake was not running. He was positioning himself. He reached the wall and spun around. The four-armed alien arrived first. Jake threw his weighted chain, wrapping it around the alien's legs. The creature stumbled and fell. Jake's sword found its throat before it could get up. The serpent creature struck next, its body whipping through the air like a living rope. Jake caught it on his shield and drove his knife into its head. Green blood sprayed across the sand. The mechanical warrior was the most dangerous. Its blade arms moved faster than Jake could see. But machines had weaknesses that living creatures did not. Jake feinted left, then rolled right. The warrior's blades struck the stone wall, sending sparks flying. For just a moment, the blades were stuck. Jake grabbed the chain from the dead alien and wrapped it around the warrior's neck. He pulled with all his strength. The warrior's head came off with a shower of sparks and oil. The arena exploded in cheers. Jake stood in the center, breathing hard and covered in blood. 3 champions lay dead around him, but something went wrong. As Jake raised his sword in victory, the chain around his neck broke. His dog tags fell out of his shirt and caught the bright lights of the arena. The metal tags flashed like mirrors, visible to every alien in the crowd. General Kratos leaned forward on his throne. His yellow eyes focused on the tags swinging from Jake's neck. "Stop!" Kratos shouted. "Guards, bring me those metal pieces." The guards surrounded Jake, but they moved carefully. They had seen what he could do. One of them pointed a shock rod at Jake's chest. "Give tags," the guard said in broken English. "General wants to see." Jake knew he had no choice. He lifted the dog tags over his head and handed them to the guard. The guard carried them up to General Kratos. Kratos held the tags up to the light. The crowd watched in silence. On the big screens around the arena, everyone could see the words stamped on the metal. Morrison, J.K. Lieutenant Commander U.S. Navy SEALs, blood type O positive CHR Astai, and the general studied the tags for a long moment. Then he handed them to Commander Vexstar. The commander's eyes grew wide as he read them. Scholar next then pushed forward. "Let me see," he said urgently. When the old scholar saw the tags, his face went pale. He began speaking rapidly in his own language. Jake could not understand the words, but he could tell the alien was excited and frightened. Commander Vexstar looked up at General Kratos. "Sir, we need to talk, privately, right now." Kratos waved his hand. "Take the human back to his cell. Keep the metal pieces. I want to know what they mean." As the guards led Jake away, he saw the 3 aliens huddled together, talking in urgent whispers. The old scholar was pointing at the dog tags and shaking his head. Back in his cell, Jake sat on the floor and touched his bare chest. The dog tags had hung there for so long, he felt strange without them, but maybe it was time. Maybe it was time for these aliens to learn what those simple pieces of metal really meant. Shard reached through the bars of her cage. "What were those metal things?" she asked. "Dog tags," Jake said. "Every human soldier wears them. They tell people who we are if we die in battle." "But you are not dead," Zix pointed out. Jake smiled. "No, I'm not. But those tags are about to cause a lot of trouble for our captors." Hours later, Jake could hear voices in the corridor. Aliens were arguing in their grinding language. He heard his name mentioned several times. He also heard a word that made him pay attention: fleet. The aliens were worried about something. Something big. Jake lay down on the metal floor and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, for the first time since his capture, he felt hope. His dog tags were gone, but their message was clear. Jake Morrison was not just another prisoner. He was a United States Navy SEAL, and somewhere out there, his people were looking for him. The aliens were about to learn that when you capture a Navy SEAL, you don't just get one soldier. You get the entire United States military as your enemy. And that was a fight they were not prepared for. Scholar Nexton did not sleep that night. He sat in his study, surrounded by books and data screens, searching through every file the Zephyrian Empire had about humans. The dog tags lay on his desk, reflecting the blue light from his computer. What? He found made his blood run cold. Commander Vextar arrived at dawn, looking tired and worried. General Kratos came with him, his face dark with anger. "Tell me what you have learned, old scholar," Kratos demanded. Nexthen picked up the dog tags and pointed to the words stamped on them. "These markings tell us everything. This human is not a simple warrior. He belongs to something called the United States Navy SEALs." "What does that mean?" Vextar asked. Nexthen activated his main screen. Images of human soldiers appeared, showing them in training and combat. The SEALs are the most elite fighting force of the human military. Only the strongest and smartest humans can become SEALs. They train for years to become perfect killing machines, Kratos laughed. One small human cannot be that dangerous. "You do not understand," Nexthen said urgently. "I have studied human military history. These creatures have been at war with each other for thousands of years. They have turned killing into an art form." The scholar brought up more files. Battle footage from human wars filled the screen. Kratos and Vextar watched in silence as humans fought with weapons, tactics, and brutality that shocked them. "Look at how they move," Nexthen continued. "See how they work together. They do not just fight to win. They fight to completely destroy their enemies." Vextar leaned forward. "But we captured only one human. What threat can one soldier be?" Nexthen pulled up a file that made both military leaders step back. It showed a single human soldier taking out an entire enemy base using only stealth and simple weapons. "SEALs are trained to work alone," the scholar explained. "They can survive in any environment. They can kill with their bare hands. They can turn anything into a weapon. And most importantly, they never give up." Kratos stared at the screen. "You mean we have been making this creature fight for our entertainment? This killing machine? Worse than that," Nexthen said. "We have been teaching him about our military. Every fight in the arena has shown him our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses. He has been studying us while we thought we were studying him." The room fell silent. Outside, they could hear the normal sounds of the city waking up. But inside the study, 3 of the most powerful aliens in the Empire were beginning to understand. They had made a terrible mistake. Vextar spoke first. "What do the other markings on the tags mean?" Nexthen examined them again. "This shows his rank. Lieutenant Commander means he leads other soldiers. This number is his identification. This tells us his blood type in case he is wounded, and this—" He paused. "What?" Kratos demanded. "This says he is Christian. It is a human religion. They believe their God wants them to protect the innocent and fight against evil." Nexthen looked up at them. "In their minds, we are the evil." Kratos began pacing the room. "How long before other humans come looking for him?" "They are probably already looking," Nexthen replied. "Human military units never abandon their people. They have a saying, 'Leave no one behind, they will search,' until they find him or confirm he is dead." Vextar activated his own communication device. "I need to speak with our fleet commanders immediately. We may have a human warship in our space right now." While Vextar made his calls, Kratos continued studying the files about human warfare. What he saw made him more worried with each passing minute. Humans did not just fight wars. They perfected them. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets. They had soldiers who could fight in space, underwater, or in any environment imaginable. Most frightening of all, they had a concept called total war, where they would use every resource to completely crush their enemies. "Sir," Vextar said, ending his communication, "our outer patrol ships have detected unknown vessels at the edge of our system. The ships use technology we do not recognize." Kratos felt his stomach drop. "Human ships? Very likely. 3 large warships and several smaller craft. They are moving slowly, searching each planet and moon." Nexthen looked up from his research. "General, I have found something else, something very important." He brought up a new file on the screen. It showed human soldiers wearing the same uniform as Jake, with the same insignia on their chests. These SEALs have a reputation throughout human space. Other humans fear and respect them. But more than that, they are considered heroes by their people. If we have harmed one of their SEALs, the entire human military will consider it an act of war. Kratos sank into a chair. How many humans are there? Over 8 billion on their home world alone. Millions more on colony planets throughout their space. Their military has ships, weapons, and soldiers beyond counting. Vextar checked his communication device again. Sir, the unknown ships have entered our outer system. They are broadcasting a message in our language. What does it say? They are asking about a missing human named Jake Morrison. They say they want to talk. Kratos stood up and walked to the window. Outside, his city stretched for hundreds of miles. Millions of Zephyrians lived and worked in those buildings. All of them were now endangered because of one human prisoner. What are our options? He asked, next and brought up more files. We could try to fight them. But look at their weapons technology, look at their battle tactics. They have been fighting wars since before our civilization existed. Or, Kratos prompted, we return their seal and hope they forgive us for making him fight in our arena. Vextar looked doubtful. Will they forgive us? We have been using their elite soldier as entertainment. Nexton shook his head. I do not know. Humans are unpredictable. Sometimes they show mercy. Sometimes they show no mercy at all. But I do know this. If we kill Jake Morrison, they will never stop hunting us. Kratos made his decision. Bring the human to me. Clean him up. Give him medical attention. And give him back those metal tags. Sir? Vextar looked confused. We are going to return him to his people. And we are going to pray they do not decide to wipe out our entire civilization for what we have done. As his officers hurried to carry out his orders, Kratos remained. At the window, in the distance, he could see the arena where Jake had fought and won so many battles. The crowd still came every day, hoping to see the amazing human warrior. They had no idea that their entertainment had brought death to their doorstep. Kratos thought about the dog tags lying on the scholar's desk. Such simple pieces of metal. But they carried a message that terrified him. Jake Morrison was not just a prisoner, he was a weapon. A weapon created by a species that had spent thousands of years learning how to kill efficiently, and now that weapons people had come to take him home. The only question was whether the Zephyrian Empire would survive the encounter. Jake was cleaning his wounds when the guards came for him. But this time was different. Instead of weapons and chains, they brought medical supplies and clean clothes. The lead guard spoke in careful English. General Kratos wishes to see you. You will not be harmed. Jake studied their faces. The guards looked nervous, even frightened. Something had changed. Something big. They led him through corridors he had never seen before. These tunnels were cleaner and better lit. Guards along. The way stepped aside and watched him pass with wide eyes. Jake could hear them whispering in their language. The corridor ended at a large door made of polished metal. 2 elite guards in golden armor stood on either side. They opened the door without speaking. Beyond was a room that took Jake's breath away. The ceiling rose 50 feet high and was covered in paintings of ancient battles. Weapons from 100 worlds lined the walls. At the center of the room sat General Kratos behind a massive desk. But Kratos was not alone. Commander Vextar stood to his right. Scholar Nexon sat in a chair to his left. And on the desk, catching the light, lay Jake's dog tags. Sit, Kratos said, pointing to a chair across from his desk. Jake sat down but remained alert. This could still be a trap. Kratos picked up the dog tags and held them out to Jake. These belong to you. Jake took the tags and put them back around his neck. The familiar weight against his chest felt good. We have learned much about you, Jake Morrison. Kratos continued. You are not what we thought you were. What did you think I was? Jake asked. A primitive warrior from a backward world. Someone we could use for entertainment in our arena? Kratos's voice was heavy with regret. We were wrong. Scholar Nexthan leaned forward. Tell me, Lieutenant Commander Morrison, how many of your people are in this star system right now? Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. Enough. Vextar activated a holographic display above the desk. It showed the Zephyrian star system with 3 large ships moving slowly between the planets. "Those are your ships?" Kratos asked. Jake looked at the display. The ships were too far away to see clearly, but their formation was familiar. "That's the USS Valiant and her battle group, my people." "They are searching for you," Vexstar said. "Of course they are. That's what we do. We never leave anyone behind." Kratos stood up and walked to the window. Outside, his city stretched to the horizon. "Your people have sent us messages. They want to talk." "That's good," Jake said. "My people prefer talking to fighting. But they're very good at both." Nexton pulled up files on his datapad. "We have studied your military history. Your species has remarkable capabilities for warfare." Jake nodded. "We've had a lot of practice." "The SEALs," Kratos said, turning back to face Jake. "Tell me about them." Jake thought for a moment. "We're special operations. We go places other soldiers can't go. We do things other soldiers can't do. We complete missions that seem impossible." "How many SEALs are there?" Vexstar asked. "Not many. A few thousand active at any time." "We're very selective about who we accept." Kratos sat back down. "A few thousand soldiers cannot threaten an entire empire." Jake's smile grew wider. "General, you're thinking about this wrong. SEALs aren't just soldiers. We're force multipliers. Each SEAL can train and lead hundreds of other warriors. And behind every SEAL is the full power of the United States military." "How powerful?" Nexton asked quietly. "Powerful enough to fight wars on a dozen worlds at the same time. Powerful enough to move entire fleets across the galaxy in weeks. Powerful enough to turn planets into glass if we have to." The room fell silent. The 3 aliens looked at each other with growing fear. "But," Jake continued, "we prefer not to do that. We're not conquerors, we're protectors. We fight to defend the innocent and preserve peace." Kratos activated his communication system. "Put me through to the human ships." The main screen came alive with static, then cleared to show a human face. Jake's heart jumped with recognition. "Captain Sarah Davis, commanding officer of the USS Valiant." "His CO and friend, General Kratos," Captain Davis said. Her voice was calm but steel hard. "I am Captain Davis of the United States Navy. We're looking for one of our people." Kratos glanced at Jake, then back at the screen. "Captain Davis, we have your Lieutenant Commander Morrison. He is unharmed." "I want to see him." Kratos gestured for Jake to move into view of the camera. Jake stepped forward and straightened to attention. "Captain Davis, Lieutenant Commander Morrison reporting, ma'am." Sarah's face showed relief, but her voice remained professional. "Are you injured, Jake?" "Nothing serious, ma'am. Ready for extraction." "Good. General Kratos, we appreciate your cooperation. We'll arrange for immediate pickup." Kratos raised his hand. "Captain, before you take your officer, I must ask, what happens now?" Sarah studied his face through the screen. "That depends, General. Jake looks like he's been fighting." "Want to explain that?" Jake spoke before Kratos could answer. "Ma'am, I was captured and forced to fight in their arena. But I was treated according to their customs. No torture, adequate food and medical care." Sarah nodded slowly. "I see. General, is this accurate?" Kratos looked surprised that Jake had not revealed the full truth. "Yes, Captain. Your officer fought with great honor." "Then we have no quarrel with you," Sarah said. "We'll collect our seal and be on our way." Relief flooded Kratos' face. "Thank you, Captain. We did not know what your officer was when we captured him." "Now you do," Sarah replied. "I trust this won't happen again." "Never," Kratos promised. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the shuttle bay of the USS Valiant. His fellow SEALs surrounded him, checking his injuries and asking about his experiences. Captain Davis approached with a smile. "Welcome home, Jake. Good to have you back." "Good to be back, ma'am. What was it like down there?" Jake touched his dog tags through his fresh uniform. "Educational." "For both sides," Sarah laughed. "I bet it was." The alien general seemed pretty shaken up. "They learned something important." Jake said, "What's that?" Jake looked out the shuttle bay window at the alien planet growing smaller below them. They learned what these dog tags really mean. They learned that when you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Sarah nodded. Think they'll remember the lesson? Oh yes, ma'am, they'll remember. And they'll make sure every other alien species in this sector remembers too. As the USS Valiant and her battle group jumped to hyperspace, Jake thought about the other prisoners still in the arena. Before leaving, he had convinced General Kratos to free them all. Shard, Zix, and Drift were on their way home to their own people. The Zephyrian Empire had learned a valuable lesson about humanity. Humans might look small and weak compared to other species, but they had something that made them far more dangerous than size or strength. They had the will to fight for each other, no matter the cost. They had the skill to turn any situation to their advantage. And they had the technology to back up their determination. Jake's dog tags had told the whole story. Not just his name and rank, but what he represented. He was a warrior from a species that had turned warfare into both science and art. The galaxy was a big place, full of dangerous aliens and hostile worlds. But humanity was no longer hiding in the shadows. They had announced their arrival in the only language the galaxy understood: strength.